vote that Labour won with was 0.5 million lower than the number of votes for Labour under Corbyn in 2019. So the actual vote was down, and it was only 34% of the vote, and yet it was it's the lowest winning majority in history. So that just shows you that a lot of people wanted to get rid of the Tories, but weren't particularly enamoured by what they were being offered by Labour. But for me, it's really that this is a key stage, that we now enter a new stage of British politics, where the programme we're going to see of limited social democracy is going to be tested against the reality of the crisis, the capitalist system that we're living in at this moment. And you know, the United Kingdom, as well as the world economy, can't escape that. Those low expectations of Labour, because Starmer and the rest of them tried to dampen down any expectations of things that would get done, that might play in his favour, for at least for a short while, because people are not expecting to see things. So if they see things like in this King's speech, there were some things that workers will go, all right, that's good. Nationalisation of the railways, a new deal for workers, GB Energy. And for those of us in Scotland, that's generating a lot of interest because it will be based in Scotland. And there's big discussions about everyone's scrambling for that to be in their area. Should it be in Grangemouth? Should it be Aberdeen, etc.? But there's that. The cancellation of the Rwanda scheme and the notice we heard today not to renew the Stockholm Bibby to house asylum seekers, and the abolition of hereditary peers. Looking at those sort of policies, they're all small things. They're not major things, but this, I think, we should stop and say it makes the ultra-lefts look ridiculous, because I've been told so many times by ultra-lefts that there is no difference between Labour and the Tories. Now, you tell me which of those policies we would have seen from a Tory government. None of them. So they're small, they're not massive, but for people to say there's nothing to be gained from getting a Labour government, that shows the nature of ultra-leftism. But they are a drop in the ocean, really, compared to the real extent of the crisis facing working class people. And that's why we will continue to push for a genuine programme of socialist measures that address the seriousness of the crisis that we face today. Like child poverty is real and it's with us now. And that's why we would support the pressure that's building at the moment for the cancellation of the 2-child cap on benefits to be removed. On Scotland, just a few words on Scotland, that's why I've been asked to speak. We're in a similar seesaw as the rest of the UK, except it's a seesaw between Labour and SNP rather than between Labour and the Tories. We've seen SNP dominance from the last 10 or 15 years finally be challenged by a big swing back from SNP to Labour. So although the vote swing in the rest of the UK was very small towards Labour, and in some areas was, as Ray quite rightly pointed out, places like London, it was actually not really a swing to Labour at all. In Scotland, there was a very significant swing of about 20% away from the Scottish National Party, and Labour gained 37.5% of the vote. I mean, the figures in terms of MPs are quite staggering, really, that the SNP had 48 MPs, and they're now down to just 9. Labour only had 1 at the time of the last general election, and that has increased to 37. It's a massive swing. And again, I don't want to keep harping about the ultra-lefts, but we were told 10 years ago, 2015, the SNP started to dominate politics. Well, they'd been in power for a few years before that, but we were told that Labour in Scotland is dead forever, comrades. And now look at that. So these siren voices from the ultra-left can often be very loud, but it's always important to put them in perspective and realise that there are long-term underground forces at play within the working class, that these groups do not really try and understand. A big factor for socialists like ourselves in the perspectives for Labour in Scotland is the continued affiliation of the trade unions. That's still strong. The pressure that trade unions put on the Labour Party. Also, it has to be said that the Scottish Labour Party had a better position on Gaza than the rest of the UK. We had in Scotland, the Labour Party conference earlier this year passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. So that accusation against Labour in Scotland wasn't able to stick as strongly as it did in those areas that Ray mentioned in the rest of the UK. But again, this resurgence could very, very quickly dissipate. And it's a smart move by the SNP to try and outflank Labour from the left. That, they're putting in that amendment to the King's Speech about the child benefit cap. But many people have seen through the pseudo-leftism of the SNP, and that's part of the reason that they've suffered here, that they've been in government in Scotland and in local authorities, and services have just got worse and worse and worse. They've overseen a general reduction in the quality of life for ordinary working class people. But it could, if Labour fails to deliver, we could see that swing back, and we don't have to wait 4 years for a general election. We've got a Scottish parliamentary election in just under 2 years, so we'll be able to see what voters think of Labour's first couple of years there. Finally, the question, just because the Scottish National Party has been defeated as a party doesn't mean that support for independence has particularly changed. It's been roughly the same for a long, long time. It's more or less 50-50. It goes up and down a bit, but of late it's been just on the side of being against independence, but it hasn't fundamentally changed. And I've got a bit of an anecdote. I've got a dear friend. She's from Leeds, but I've known her in Scotland, in Glasgow, for 25 years, and for some reason she's an out-and-out Scottish independence campaigner. She campaigned for the Alba Party that people might know about, which is the Alex Salmond split off from the SNP. They only got about 1,000 votes in each constituency where they stood. They lost their deposit in all 19 constituencies. You would have thought that would have put a stop to your sort of ideas about getting independence. But then a week after the election, she's on the debate night TV program, and she's up there demanding a referendum, an independence referendum. So the people who are in favour of it's like an obsession, and they're not going to stop. It's just going to keep going, and she's one of them. I love her, but she is obsessed by this question. She even claimed on this debate that there was 52% support for independence, so it should be supported. But the last official poll showed it was only 46%. But what do facts matter if you've got something like that you really believe in? To me, this is where the battle really starts. The battle really is to show the need for thoroughgoing socialist policies, welcoming any reforms that are positive that the Labour government does, not being totally against them, but pointing out that the major transformation in the economy that's really needed is not being touched. The sides are not being touched by these small reforms, and therefore we'll continue to fight for a thoroughgoing socialist programme.